Good afternoon, everyone. This is Margaret O'Meara with your retirement plan update. We're going to talk about the 403B and profit sharing plans. We're also going to talk about cash flow, debt management, and then also just talk a little bit about Garfield Park's contributions to the plan. So George Washington said, we must consult our means rather than our wishes. And basically what that means is that we want to live within our means so that we can be sound financially rather than kind of getting in trouble with spending more than we make. So when you look at cash flow and debt management, we're going to take a look at reviewing your income, adding up your expenses, and then determining your cash flow. And Benjamin Franklin said, beware of little expenses, a small leak will sink a great ship. So when you take a look at your income, there's a couple of different ways to look at it. You can look at your gross income, and then look at taxes and everything else. Or you can just look at what really is coming into your bank account. Okay, so what is GPA paying you every payroll period? What is that? And then if you have any other stuff, I know a lot of you have second jobs and do tutoring and other things. So that would also be added to your income, whatever kind of goes into your bank account. So we have the income side, and then we want to do the expense side. So the way to do this, the easiest way, if you can, is to actually just look at 3 months worth of bills. It can be easy because now if you go to your credit card or your bank account, you can download those 3 months into like a spreadsheet, and then it makes it much easier to take a look. If you don't want to do that, we do have a worksheet that we can help out with where you can do it manually. Okay, and just add up your expenses for every category for the last 3 months, and then any large expenses, make sure those are included. Like for example, if you own your house, your homeowner's bill is usually paid once a year. We want to make sure we get that into the whole mix. Okay, so any payments like that. And then we'll also talk about credit card debt, because generally if you're carrying credit card debt, you probably are living beyond your means. Okay, so this is that worksheet. So you'll see all the different types of things. There's so many things we can spend money on, right? So we have all these listed, and I'm happy to send that to anyone that wants it. Just let me know. This also is a pretty interesting chart. I haven't seen one since COVID, but basically this just shows, so in the United States, the average annual household income, so everybody working in one household, is $75,000 a year. And you'll see the biggest expense is housing at about a third, and then food at 13%, and then car transportation at 15%. Okay, so retirement plans and things are down here, but this is pretty interesting to see what, if you're in line or not with what you spend versus the average. Not that you have to spend like the average, but it's kind of a good way to take a look at what you have and where you may be able to cut expenses. So when we talk about needs, it's like, what do you really need to live on? Okay. And so as we, are making more money, getting better financial shape, we can also, use the money in different ways. But to really add up your cash flow and figure out if you're positive or negative, you want to take that income that we talked about. So either it would be your annual income or what hits your bank account, and then what leaves your bank account and credit cards, and then that's your annual cash flow. Okay, so if that number is negative, just take a look at your income every month. You may need to get a second job. I know my sister works really hard. She's in a hotel management group, and she needs to replace electrical in her house. And now she's, bartending like 4 nights a week to do that. So, she also cuts expenses and budgets where she can. So we want to make sure that we have really good processes in place to get your cash flow positive. And normally writing it down and tracking it, well, is not fun, but that's where you can really make a big change. You can see exactly what you're doing. There's also different things where I remember when I was starting out my practice, my financial planning and wealth management practice, and I went from, a good corporate job to making no money. And it took me a long time to actually make a paycheck. And what I would do with my husband, being concerned about, money, is we would go to the ATM machine every Sunday, and he would get a certain amount, I would get a certain amount. That's all the money we had for the week. So for food, entertainment, clothing, whatever we wanted to buy, anything, it had to be within that range. if we didn't spend that, we could carry it over and then maybe use it for something else, but we could not really go outside of that window. And that really did help, just forcing us to make different decisions. And then there's also a way you can do that by envelopes. Everyone's a little bit different, but we want to make sure that we can get our cash flow positive. And believe me, I've worked with everyone at the schools, and it does not matter how much money you make at the school. It's really behavioral and how much money you spend. I've seen everyone at the school save money and get a pot of cash together. It's just paying attention and making it a goal. Okay. And then emergency planning, you definitely want to have enough money should emergency happen. So once you have your cash flow all set and it's positive, you're saving in the 403B, and you also want to make sure you have a chunk of money on the side, so that if something happens, your car breaks down or what have you, you can pay for that. Okay, so this just talks about needs, necessity of life, and food, shelter, clothing, and things like that. Okay, so if your cash flow is positive, that's phenomenal. You're living with your means, and Benjamin Franklin said, if you know how to spend less than you get, you're the philosopher's stone. It's just very difficult to do, especially with how expensive things are and inflation, and that's what's happening there. So know how much debt you can really afford. Okay, so we need to look at the payments and things like that. Okay, so good debt would be low interest rate debt, like home mortgages, for something that may appreciate in value. The best investment is probably in yourself for schooling and things like that. Bad debt, high interest, which would be credit cards, and does not really usually hold its value. It's I have one son that never goes into debt, and one son that would be in hock, not caring about interest rates for the rest of his life, probably. So we're working on that, but it is very difficult. We want to make sure we have, good habits in place. So, okay, to take on debt, we kind of talked about this, but basically we want to make sure that we're going to buy something that's going to grow in value. If you're buying a house, I would definitely recommend buying something that's affordable. They'll lend you all kinds of money. You want to make sure that you can handle those payments really easily. Okay, emergency fund in place, saving regularly for retirement. You don't want to overpay. One thing I do every now and then is I want to look at every credit card statement that comes in, because there's these things that get billed like every month, and then things that they renew after a year that you forget that you bought, and that can be hundreds of dollars. So even $15 a month, over the year, that's $180, and that might be your food bill for a week or more. So it's really important to make sure you're watching where your money is really going. And then credit card debt is so difficult. I got into credit card debt when I got out of college. I probably told you guys a story. I thought I was going to be, knocking it out of the park and making all kinds of money initially. And I started making like $6 an hour. And the money, it took me a long time to kind of climb up the ladder. So I used the credit card. I got into, $6,000, $7,000 of debt. And then I really focused on paying it back. It took a while, but I did it. And we just want to make sure that you're not using the card to make ends meet. You're not just having tons of cards. You don't want to use up your whole credit limit, and just really, really be careful. When you think about I think about the debt that I had back then, $6,000, $7,000. I don't even know what I spent the money on, so a lot of times if you think about it or wait to buy something, it helps. I know, I love Amazon Prime. And, what I started doing was instead of buying something straight off, I would just put it in the, save for later. And then eventually, sometimes I never even need this stuff, which, saved me a lot of money over time. Again, we talked about this, but review statements regularly, keep purses in check, pay your bill on time, pay everything off in full. If you do have debt, try to pay a little bit extra every month. And it really does help to cut that down. So if you need to pay off credit card debt, there's two ways: Snowball and Avalanche. So Snowball Method is really, let's say you have 4 cards and one's like $300, $500, $1,000, $1,100, whatever. Pay off the $300 one first and then get momentum to really kind of pay them off. The other way, the Avalanche Method, is if the 1,100 one that you have, if the highest credit card balance you have you look at the rate. So if that rate is higher, pay that one off first. Okay, so it's pretty crazy. The credit card rates are 18 to like 24% or more, depending on payment history. It's really quite a shame, but we want to make sure we're just paying that off as quickly as we can. It all takes time and discipline. And one thing that I want to talk about too is the GPA plan. So in the plan, you guys know it is super, super, super generous. And over time, I've shown the charts before, you can really gather a lot of money. And if I have another school I work with that has a plan like Garfield's, and there was a client I have who became very ill. She thought she was going to work for 2 years more than she actually did. And luckily, because she saved and because she planned and because the school was so generous, she was able to retire, without a problem. This is not the case for most people. Okay. So, and this money is your money. It's not pension, like a promise that you're going to get paid, in 20 or 30 years. This is your money. And it's in your account. Okay. So it's a phenomenal, phenomenal plan. And I know that they intend to keep those contributions coming as they and when they can. So again, I'm here to help. And also, if you have your own financial person, you may want to, just make sure they're looking at your 401k plan as well. And that's it. So thank you so much. And I hope you guys have a fantastic summer.